Welcome, Josh. I'm so happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to meet you as well. It's been a long time coming, I feel, after I've followed you for almost 2 years.
Thank you for following me. It really means a lot that I am able to reach people who are just newly diagnosed because I think that's when they really need to see that there is hope, right?
Yeah, I think that was the great thing is with yours being one of the first accounts I came across, it was very much a hopeful account rather than something that was telling me that my life was over. So that was really helpful, yeah.
And it was the diagnosis was 2 years ago.
Yes, August 2023. Yeah.
Can you take us back before like your symptoms and how long it took you to get diagnosed?
Yeah. So I think it was a bit of a classic one where it was a long process. So my first relapse was actually in 2020 during COVID, and that was a sudden onset of intense balance issues. So I was at work one day and my balance just started to go. I suddenly started to feel like I was going to vomit constantly. Had to come home from work and then went to the hospital. And by that point, I couldn't stand, couldn't function, couldn't even lift my head because every time I lifted my head, I would just need to vomit. That's just the reaction that was happening. And I went to the hospital, and because it was during COVID, they kind of just dismissed me completely and said it's probably something called vestibular neuronitis, and they just said it was an inflamed nerve in the vestibular system and go away. Basically, was the message. So no MRIs or anything done. No, didn't speak to a neurologist. Just saw an on-call doctor, and that was it. So that lasted for about a month. So I was in bed for a month, could barely move, was off work, couldn't function at all. And as you do with MS, with a relapse, it kind of just recovered naturally and got to the point where I was functioning normally again. Just put it down to what they diagnosed me with. But over the next couple of years, I had the health anxiety that came with all of the symptoms that started cropping up because you just have weird numbness or vibrating or balance issues or anything like that. And I was convinced there was something wrong with my body almost all the time. And I was going to the doctor all the time, and you had the various things where they were doing like ultrasounds on lymph nodes and doing MRIs on. I had MRIs of my back and all different kinds of things because, especially leading up to the relapse that got me diagnosed, I had numbness from like the waist down for about 3 months prior to that. So I was seeing spinal experts and things like that. They were checking for cancer and checking for spinal injuries and everything to try and find out where this numbness was from. And they couldn't find anything. And then one day, the balance issues from 3 years before came back. So I went back into hospital. They finally took it seriously because we weren't in COVID anymore. Did MRIs and found out it was MS. I was told in the waiting room that they'd found things consistent with MS, and then they took me off to the ward, and I was in hospital for 5 days on steroids and recovered, luckily.
I love that you finished your whole diagnosis with the word recovered. Did you know what MS was?
So I'd heard of it. During my diagnosis, I was at the end of my master's degree in neuroscience. So whilst I was in hospital for the relapse, I was writing my master's dissertation. So that's what I was doing in the hospital bed. So I was kind of like treating it as a bit of a research retreat with all of the doctors and neurologists coming. I was just asking them questions about what's happening, asked them to show me my MRI because I'd just been trained to do MRIs on the masters, and it was actually really interesting for me. So I kind of heard of it, didn't really know what it was in any depth, but obviously very soon after I found out, yeah. Yeah,
I
so
did not
uh,
know that you are studying or you were studying neuroscience. That's so exciting. I have a million questions about that now. Do you think the stress had anything to do with your relapse?
yeah, that was an incredibly intense year. My master's year was the what I look at as the highest stress year of my life by a long way. And I've had like stress in the past. I struggled with a lot of mental health issues when I was younger. But that year on the masters was by far the most intense stress that I've had. And it was about a month after I'd interviewed for my PhD that the proper relapse came on. So that was like the pinnacle of my stress. I had all the master stuff, all the dissertation, then had that interview, and I was unbelievably stressed about that interview. And then that's when the full-on relapse hit. So the stress definitely, I would just say definitely had it had
Aren't
involvement.
they teach you in neuroscience school when you get this degree that stress is the number one enemy in general? Like, aren't you supposed to have like a whole lecture about that or a whole semester?
I know not enough is made of the fact that stress causes most things, I feel. Yeah, it's definitely I don't know, underutilized as a tool controlling stress. Yeah.
Hmm. So what happened since?
So since I've been fortunate enough to essentially fully recover to the extent that I live fairly normally. So after my diagnosis, I then had 3 months of appointments, all of the you got to take all your vaccines, you got to have all blood tests done, make sure everything's fine. And then I was given the option of the medications. I chose to go on to Tysabri at the time. I was not informed properly about what they were. As a scientist, I was able to go and read about the. So my PhD is now in neuroscience and pharmacology. So I was able to go and read about the drugs and what they did. So I chose Tysabri because I felt like it was the drug that had the least effect on my body whilst being highly effective because it doesn't destroy any immune cells. It doesn't wipe out part of your body. It just stops the immune cells from entering the central nervous system. So that for me was the most natural way I could be medicated. But I wasn't informed about the fact that once you're on a DMT like Tysabri, it's very difficult to come off of it. And I wasn't informed fully on the kind of effect it might have on your body. But anyway, at the time, I decided to go on to Tysabri
Yeah.
and have been on that since. And essentially started to then try and control every other aspect of my life that I could in a way that was trying to help control MS. And
What does that include?
so the first thing that I looked at was diet, and it was something that I was made aware of by accounts like yours, is that diet can have a huge involvement. And I started trying out everything. So I started out, I think, with the Overcoming MS
Yeah.
diet. I think I started out with that.
That's very similar to the Mediterranean diet.
Yes, yeah. So I started out with that, and everything because I was kind of researching it as I went along, and every diet I started, I kind of found something that I wasn't agreeing with what they were doing. So I kind of just ended up with what I thought was the easiest way to live, which was just to eat whole foods. I felt like any diet I came across that didn't say cut out ultra processed foods, I just ignored from that point onwards. So my diet now is just incredibly clean. And at the first, it was very difficult because it seems like this whole new world where you're having to read
Urbani.
ingredients and you realize how many ingredients are in something like a loaf of bread. And you're like, why is there sugar and emulsifiers in my bread? I don't I don't get it. And now I don't struggle at all. I just eat completely whole foods. If I read an ingredients list and it isn't whole foods, I just don't buy it. And at first it took a lot of discipline, but now it's just a lifestyle.
It's easier.
And yeah, and as I did it, that's when I saw a lot of improvements. So the symptoms that were kind of left over, vibrations and patches of numbness and things, kind of started to resolve. It could be medication, it could be, but it was just correlating with what I was changing in my diet. So
From a neuroscience perspective, I just came back from Dr. Joe Dispenza's seminar this weekend. So I feel like, yes, diet is so important, and that's the easiest to change because you can do something about it. You can pick what you are eating and what not. But because you already know that you are doing so much for your body, I think your mind already switches to healing mode because you believe the diet is working. So changing the mind is the hardest after the diet, not even after, before the diet. So if somebody starts talking to you like, no, change your diet first, change your stress and your mind first, it's not gonna work because people don't see the results right away. It's so hard. So everything
yeah,
starts with diet.
yeah, and as you say, when you change something, it is that feeling that like I'm controlling something now. Like something is now under my control. My health is now under my control. Because everything you read in terms of the ultra processed foods and immune dysregulation, every time I was switching something out and putting something new in, it was that feeling of like I'm now controlling my immune system. My immune system is going to be better. It's going to function better. So I immediately started to feel like that was under control. And it didn't happen straight away. Obviously, experimenting and changing things probably took 6 to 9 months overall, just changing things. But now for the last 6 months, I've probably been very consistent and feel really good. Just focusing on eating whole foods. I didn't cut out any area. I still eat, meat and I still eat fish and I still eat carbs and all the other things. I just eat less sugar and just eat whole foods. And that works really well.
And I'm
So
sure you switched even the sugar to coconut sugar, so you are buying the healthier alternatives.
yeah. So yeah, and that was the other thing is then you start to get into those specifics of like rather than refined sugars, you find unrefined alternatives, and rather than using golden syrup, I use like maple syrup or honey, and like just start to switch those small things. But I think there was the first step of changing to whole foods, and then after that, I was like, right now we can focus on those little things as we go along.
Do you
But
still eat cheese, dairy, gluten?
so I cut out dairy completely, and I've had I've had dairy a couple of times since. The doctors don't think it's an allergy, but I have an awful reaction to dairy now if I eat it. And dairy for me, when I researched it, the reason I cut it out was because it seemed naturally inflammatory, more so than most other things. In terms of when you listen to, there's like evidence that up to 80% of the population have some sort of dairy intolerance or lactose intolerance. And I was like, that seems like a no-brainer to get rid of. So I got rid of that. Gluten, I cut out for a while to experiment and then put it back in again. And I don't think it has a massive effect on me, whether I eat gluten or not. So I do now eat gluten, which is useful, I have to say. But it was one of those things that I was willing to cut out if it was going to significantly help, but I didn't see any difference. So I put it back in again. And
You also
that,
live in Europe where everything is just a little bit healthier, maybe
yeah,
much more than in America. But yes, when I went to Italy, I was perfectly fine eating anything there.
yeah, yeah. And that's the thing is it's the same with any other food. If I'm buying bread, I'll now eat very clean ingredient bread, which does exist, luckily, which is good, that doesn't have any of the ultra processed food items in there. And I don't eat generally a lot of things like pizza or desserts anyway, so that didn't really affect me. The main one was just what bread am I going to use or what alternatives am I going to use. So it was just useful to be able to use normal bread. But other than that, it's quite easy.
So
But
what was
then
the
with
next thing after diet that you changed?
Yeah, so with that, it was supplements, I think, because I now take quite a few supplements, and
Do you have
I
any
just
deficiencies when you did blood work?
the only one that they recommended was vitamin D, which made sense given that I'm sure you're aware of all the studies on
Did you know your,
vitamin
do you
D.
know your level? What was your level when you were diagnosed?
I can't remember now. I can't remember off the
I,
top of
I
my head.
never forget that number because mine was 23. And when I heard that, I'm like, why my doctor never tested for vitamin D? My regular doctor, they tested when I was diagnosed. So yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, I don't think mine was ridiculously low. I don't think it was a kind of issue, but they said to take 3,000 IU of vitamin D. I now take 5,000 IU a day, and then obviously get outside and I get in the sun and have it from naturally from my diet anyway. But that's that was the main one, vitamin D, and then other things started to follow along. Like I'd take the lion's mane mushroom extract now. I would take like cranberry extract. Take what else there? It's a whole long list of supplements. I could probably find it, but I haven't got it on. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I think the main ones for me were vitamin three. Oh, and omega threes. That yeah, I take those a lot. But
Did you feel any improvement on lion's mane?
I think at the time, it, this is the difficult thing is I don't know if I naturally improved or whether that improved it. But at the time, my speed of thought was quite low. I felt, and I had a lot of brain fog, and I think that having the lion's mane extract helped.
Mhm.
That could be it was just natural improvement. It could be that sleep improved or anything else around it. But I think in my mind it helped, and therefore, even if it's placebo, that's worth it for me. So it's, yeah,
I keep taking it, whatever works, it works. I'm not stopping my routine now.
exactly. Don't question it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So then after supplements came exercise. Exercise was a difficult one because at first it was kind of a way to punish my body. Because when I was first diagnosed,
Mentally, or you never exercised before?
I exercised before. So that year before I was diagnosed, I'd run a marathon and an ultra marathon. So I was already at a level of fitness that I was satisfied with. But when I was diagnosed, it kind of started to be a way to really push myself. I was quite frustrated with my body, as a lot of people that get diagnosed are. And exercise was that way to like really kind of punish it, but also really push it like really hard and find out where the limit was. And I kind of took that to an extreme. So the first 6 months of 2024, so 3 months after my diagnosis, I ran 23, was it 23 half marathons, two marathons, and an ultra marathon, and
22 marathons?
23 half marathons.
Half marathon. How long is the
Then
half marathon? I'm sorry, I'm not a runner
that's
and
right.
I don't think I ever will be interested. I do other things. So how long is the half marathon?
Half marathon's 13 miles.
13. And how long is the
The
ultra?
marathon was 26 miles, and then the ultra marathon was 31 miles. So that was one a week. So I was doing that every week, just to like every weekend, I'd just get up and like really push my
So you
body.
didn't really have to prepare because they were after each other.
Yeah, exactly. There was no
Okay.
rest period and there was no preparation period. It was just go out and run them. And that's what I mean. It was illogical nonsense pushing myself. And fortunately, I kind of caught it after that 6 months. I then stopped a little bit, slowed down in the second half of that year, and got exercise under control to where I was exercising for controlling like my health rather than punishing myself. So then I was running for fitness. I was like lifting weights with functional exercises to improve my mobility and that kind of strength. And then I was doing yoga and Pilates, and that was a lot more relaxing and recovery. And then it got a bit healthier. So exercise I see is now essential, but in a very different way to when I was first diagnosed. But at the time, I thought I was being like disciplined and pushing myself through things. And when I look back now, I was punishing my body for what it was doing to me. But it was, yeah, that was just part of that transitional period to coping with being diagnosed, I think.
Yes, and you were probably also trying to make the best of it and prove it that you this disease is not gonna like you are too young and all those like trying to get over the whole thing. Not even probably thinking about it and believing that the medication is that doing it things.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so exercise is another way that I would say I controlled things. Then came stress management, which we mentioned at the beginning. Yeah, stress management, meditation was something I'd never taken seriously before. Same with things like yoga and Tai Chi and things like grounding and all of those I've taken up now and I do them pretty much every day.
I feel like everybody has like an evolution. Like they have to learn the food first. Like you cannot just jump in like you are off the shelf and you just got diagnosed and you cannot just sit down and meditate because there are so many things that you have to figure out first before you sit down to be able to shut your brain off and be in a different universe basically. So it's step by step. So I like that you did the nutrition, exercise, vitamin supplements, like bringing down the inflammation first, and then you were ready to take it to the next level. So tell me about
Yeah.
meditation. I'm fascinated listening to that.
So I started doing breath work as well as different types of meditation. So when I started with Wim Hof
Yes.
and doing his,
What
which
about
I
cold
thought,
sponges, cold showers, ice
yeah,
bath,
so
any of those?
I was doing the cold showers every day and doing the breathing techniques. And that was good for a while. But then I kind of, in that way, you like analyze what's going on in your body. I found the cold showers were making me really tired. And at the time, I was blaming it on other things, and then realized the cold was actually making me really tired. And then in the last winter that we've just had, realized that I don't react well to cold. So that was a whole,
Especially the winter.
yeah. So that was a whole process in itself. So I started with Wim Hof, and then kind of transitioned into breath work. And have you heard the app Headspace?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I use that now as well. And those I feel are just, I think with Wim Hof, I was getting that exercise effect, like I was doing something and I was still being like proactive. Whereas with the other apps, it's a lot more chill. And that's what I learned to appreciate rather than the intensity of it, and started to treat it as like a lowering stress rather than having to actively do something. And yeah, so I've now been doing the breath work, things like Headspace, and then I use non-sleep deep rest as well, which is there's a protocol for that on YouTube, which is really good. It's that where you visualize your body. So it's when you have like you imagine the light on your body and see each body part and move up the body and take deep breaths in and out in between. And that I've never felt heavier in my life than when I do that. It's so relaxing. And again, that's like that mental side if I can actually feel myself reducing stress. So it's also really helpful in that sense. And then I got into grounding as well. So I now have a grounding mat that I use when I sleep, when I'm working from home. I go out and ground in the garden. And
No
I,
stats, just walking on the grass, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, just bare feet on the ground. And something that fascinates me with that is when I'm working sometimes you get that intensity, like that tightness in your chest or like your eyes or something like that, where you're feeling stressed. You're actually feeling like measurably overwhelmed. When I have the grounding mat, I don't get any of that. I
Mm.
don't feel it at all. And so that one I carried on because I felt like that was again a measurable reduction in stress. So
So
yeah,
is
that's
it
what.
just a mat that you use by your desk on the floor?
Yeah, so it's a mat that you plug in to the wall, and I don't know what the plugs in the US are like, but in the UK they have the three-pronged plug.
Yes.
So the bottom two are where the electricity comes from. The top one is where it takes the energy from the Earth's core, which is what stops the plug from catching on fire.
Hmm.
And you plug it into the wall, it takes the energy from the Earth, puts it into the mat, so then you get the energy through your body from the Earth whilst you're just sat at the desk. And that helps me so much. It helps my sleep and it helps just general stress levels. And so you can probably see where everything's coming from. It's like everything's now natural. I'm trying to do everything that is in line with the world. And yeah, which then leads me on to the next thing, which was the next part of my kind of process of taking control of everything I possibly could was changing to natural products in the house. I think this is something you posted about. Yeah, where I now use natural kitchen cleaners, natural bathroom cleaners, toilet cleaner, all of my shower gels, shampoos, deodorants, everything is only natural ingredients, free from all of the toxic ingredients. And again, that's something that's not, to me, I don't feel like it's measurably different in myself to how I feel, but it's something that I feel like I'm controlling. And there's evidence that it can affect, especially things like MS with the toxic products. They found some correlation with MS diagnosis and the use of them. So I was like, well, it seems again like a no-brainer if they're accessible. Change everything to a natural product.
Yes, when you have toxicity in your body and when you put everything on it, it goes inside also. So it's
Yeah.
the more you can reduce, the better. I make my own clinic supply. I use essential
Mm.
oils for like on my body, in the air, like everywhere in my house. It's and it makes me feel better too. It's
Yeah.
lavender calms you, wild orange gives you energy. So it's very,
Mhm.
very important. Yes, I love to hear
Yeah.
that. Usually when I talk to a man, this is not a conversation we are having, but I'm really enjoying this because I kind of want to change every man's perspective about this. Like I've
Yeah.
been telling my husband, no, this is, and now he's on board, but it's so hard. And I love that you did all your research and you're doing this.
My girlfriend always says that is that she's relieved that she's with someone that wants to take control of it because even though sometimes it's inconvenient when I suddenly go, I'm not eating this anymore, or we're not using that product, get rid of it, or sometimes there was a time when I was reading the ingredients of my vitamin tablets that I was taking, and I got really annoyed because I was like, why are there fillers and binders in my vitamins? Like these are things that are meant to be good for me. And I like stomped down the stairs. We're not using these anymore. Throw them in the bin. Just so there are times when it's annoying, but she generally says that she's relieved that she's with someone that is taking control and not just allowing the disease to be worse. Because that's the worst thing, right? Is if you just carry on as normal as you were before, because you're now in a different situation. You're with something that you can work with and improve. So you want to, yeah, improve it in as many ways as possible.
Yes. So where are your symptoms right now? Do you have any?
Generally, they're very good. There are probably more days where I'm symptom free than have any symptoms. My worst are in the evenings, fatigue wise. Whereas before, I'd be able to carry on a lot longer. Now it's kind of like 5 o'clock. Sometimes by about 7, I'm in that like emotionless, tired state where I just want to do nothing and just read and not think about anything. But that isn't every day. It's just sometimes. I sometimes get the patches of numbness on my body where it just feels horrible, and I'll just be like sat there and I'm like, that is really irritating. Like the numbness on the legs or like on my arms. Vibrations. Sometimes I get like vibrations through my legs or in my feet. But again, these are all things that I view as very livable. Like I'm just grateful that they're not anything that massively impacts my life. I think the worst one potentially down MS tends to affect my left side, the left side of my body more than the right side.
Everybody's.
So yeah, So I've got some like muscle atrophy in my left leg, in my calf, and my left one of the fingers on my left hand doesn't really cooperate as it should, and things like that. But again, very livable things. It doesn't stop me running, doesn't stop me lifting weights, doesn't stop me doing my work. So I'm kind of like I'm improving it. I'm controlling everything I can. If these are the things I'm left with, that's fine. I can deal with that.
Where do you see yourself in the future living with MS, or not even living with MS, but like I feel like you have a much bigger story to share here, being a neuroscientist. And lately I've been very spiritual when it comes to why MS or any disease chooses us, or we choose them, or whatever we go down this path. And I just want to know, what have you ever thought about it? Like, why you, or what's in the future to change this, influence people, maybe?
Yeah, I think I don't know how much I believe in being chosen and everything, but I think for me, I was definitely equipped to deal with it because where I'd had mental health issues in the past, I'd done a lot of self work and a lot of building resilience. So I feel like the extent to which the diagnosis had an effect on me was actually not that large. It wasn't like a catastrophic thing for me. When I was in hospital, I was kind of like, I'm kind of just enjoying life. And if I'm able to just enjoy life still, then it can do what it wants. And obviously there are some times that, especially at first, that I struggled with it. But now there's days where I struggle with it are few and far between. And I'm generally okay. So like going forward, I actually had a whole like change of mind fairly recently to all of this because as I say, last year I was pushing myself a lot, and me and my girlfriend were watching the Avengers, and there's obviously a whole. Have you seen the films?
No.
Okay, so there's a whole load of characters, and two particularly. There was one that's Captain America, and his that's kind of how I saw what I was doing to begin with, which his thing is just like grit and determination and discipline, push through everything, keep fighting. That's very much how I started with MS. What I do now and going forward is very much like what the Hulk does. So the Hulk gets infected with gamma radiation and he has this anger that he can't control. And when he's the Hulk. And when he's him and they fight and he can't control any of it. And now, by the end of the films, he's now in control of it. He lives as both at the same time. And one of the things he says is he said he stopped seeing Hulk as the disease and started to see Hulk as the cure. So he's like living with it. Now, I'm not saying that MS is the cure and it's magnificent, but it did like inspire me in a way that I was like, I can treat MS in a way that it's something I'm controlling, but like living with. So if I eat something that it doesn't agree with and I get a vibration or like my symptoms flare up, I'm like, thank you, MS. I'll stop eating that. That's great. Or if I overdo something at work and my fatigue gets really bad, I'm like, okay, I need to slow down a bit. So going forward, it's just very much like living in tandem with it and like utilizing it a little bit more. And I'm aware there's going to be a point where it's probably, well, I don't want to say I'm aware there's a point where it'll probably do something because we don't know that. And it may not. But if there's a point where it was a more significant part of my life symptom wise, I'd still like to think that I'm just controlling everything I can control and everything I can't control. I'm just kind of like, okay, that's something I'm living with this thing now rather than like fighting all the time because that was exhausting.
You almost sound like, I love that, whatever you just said. I almost sound like surrendering in a way, not fully letting you control your life, but thanking for being there so you can live a better life.
Yeah. Yeah. And without it, I wouldn't be anywhere near as healthy as I am generally now. It was one of those weird things that like you get diagnosed with a chronic illness but get healthier because as a result.
I heard
So
so many stories, so you are not the only one. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So that's where I see it going. I mean, in terms of my research, my specialist area is pain. So a lot of the work I do is on understanding what pain does in the body, how pain works in the body, and then treating pain. So that's where I'd like to keep going because I think one of the worst things I see with a lot of illnesses is the pain aspect. The reason I was first interested in it was because everyone experiences pain. But then being in pain is, I feel like, the worst state you can be in, obviously. So with things like, because I've had random pains and stuff with MS, and they're like the really debilitating moments. If you have like that intense pain, you just like your brain goes and you can't think about anything. You want it to go away. So that's where my research is going in terms of treating pain. We're trying to do that with pharmaceuticals at the moment. I'd like to try and look at it as a more natural way. Now I'm down that path.
I was about to ask, like right now, probably 90% of the world, they think about the only way to treat pain is with pharmaceuticals. And I want to ask you, are you familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work?
Only from what you posted, not
Okay.
deeply familiar
So
with it.
take that as a sign that I
Yeah.
posted that and get the book called Becoming Supernatural because that's going to change your mind. He's also a
Okay.
neurologist and he was in hospital beds. They told him without surgery he's never gonna walk, and he changed his mindset. He told the doctors he will, and he got up and started walking. Not the same day, but over
Yeah.
time.
Good
And
work. Yeah.
it's now he has amazing data backed with so many case studies and people that got up from their wheelchair. We even saw one person getting up from the wheelchair at the event.
Mm.
Blind people seeing, regrowing thyroid. It's just insane. So it's 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 mind blowing what a human mind can do if you believe in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. And it's one of the things that you look at with pain is how much of it is in the brain and how much of it is psychological and how you can improve it with mindset. So yeah, it is something that I would like to do. Where that will be possible, I don't know yet, but that's what I would like to aim towards in terms of that. And then running at the moment, I'm fundraising for the MS Society in the UK, and I've got an ultra marathon in June, which is the event that I'm fundraising with them this year, which is a 100-kilometer ultra marathon. So that's where that's going. But I'm doing it very. Last year was very brute force. This year is very like running, recovery, make sure I stretch, make sure I do my meditation, make sure like everything's in line rather than, yeah, I'm being grateful to be able to run and go out in nature and enjoy it rather than like doing it to punish myself. So that's where I'm going forward with that. And again, that's all part of like treating myself a bit more kindly in terms of doing exercise because I want to enjoy it and enjoy what I can do rather than punish punish myself with it. So yeah, that's where that's going as well.
Do you have any advice other than not punish yourself once you get diagnosed? Like for people who are just newly diagnosed. I mean, your story is already an advice and already an inspiration, but other than that, do you have anything?
Oh, I think if I could go back and say something to myself, I would say be kinder to yourself. Like try and see what opportunities can come from it, which is such a hard thing to hear at the time. I think it's such a hard thing to hear at the time. But when I look back now, I think it's just like try and understand that your body's saying it needs something rather than your body trying to attack you. You know, I think yeah, that's probably what I needed to hear. Like I'm not fighting my body. It's like you need to control it.
Yeah, your body is telling you that something is wrong and pay attention instead of questioning, like, why me?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to share before we close?
No, I think that's everything. Thank you for having me. It's been
Thank you for coming.
really nice.
I love this. I learned so many things about you and in general, I love it. Thank you.